Good evening, everyone. Welcome back inside our Home Field Credit Union Studio B as we present this week's edition of the Milford Informer. As always, I am your host, Tim Coet. It was a week full of important developments for both the town and the school system over this past week. We will get you up to speed on everything you need to know there, and we will also update you on the week in MHS sports a little bit later on. Let's show you exactly what's coming up in tonight's Top Stories Rundown.
Tonight, we'll give you a recap of some of the key articles at this week's Springtown meeting, including discussion on the town's budget and proposed 55 and older housing on Main Street. Also tonight, we'll share some of the comments made by the finalists in the running to fill the assistant principal vacancy over at Milford High School. And later in sports, we have a pair of highlight reels to show you from this week in Milford baseball, and we'll also get you up to speed on the Lady Hawks softball team as they matched up against a pair of playoff caliber opponents.
This week, residents and town officials convened inside Upper Town Hall for Milford's annual Springtown meeting. As always, many important decisions regarding the town's future were discussed at length. Let's take you inside Town Hall for a recap of just a few of the issues discussed at town meeting.
Milford's annual Springtown meeting took place inside Town Hall this past Monday. As always, one of the top priorities for the meeting was the approval of the town budget for the next fiscal year.
Now, Article 4 is the big enchilada. This is all the operational budgets in our town. And if you see the numbers, they are pretty significant, especially the bottom number where you see right now our proposed budget for today on Article 4 is $500,000 over $103 million. So $103,592,000. So obviously a significant amount of money that we're looking to spend at this town meeting. All these budgets have been extensively vetted.
As discussion over the budget continued, details emerged on an agreement that will lead to more transparency related to the school budget, as well as active steps to improve the Milford Schools rating.
Many of you know that I considered placing an amendment to Article 4 in order to deduct the $1.3 million from the budget in order that taxpayers, Milford taxpayers, would not have to pay the increased taxes. The school department told me of the catastrophe that would ensue if even the $1.3 million were to be deducted out of an over $60 million budget from all sources for this fiscal year. They told me for $1.2 million, the school department would have to fire 20 teachers. Well, I just could not live with that. So instead, we developed an agreement with the school committee, with the school superintendent, and with the finance committee. And let me thank Kevin McIntyre, our school superintendent, Al Correa, Chris Moran, and Joe Callery for all of us working together to come up with this agreement. The agreement includes there will be at least 3 open forums held in this year that will be open to all Milford community citizens to discuss the aspects in detail of the budget for Milford School District. If the success of this agreement is not achieved, I promise to come forward next year at next year's town meeting with this amendment to the school budget to reimburse the Milford taxpayers for the cost of educating students in other districts. In the meantime, I urge you to vote favorably on Article 4. Thank you very much.
If not, the question comes upon the motion of receiving the report of the Finance Committee and voting for the appropriations recommended in their motion. All those in favor manifest by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion is carried unanimously.
Changes to town meeting protocol were a major topic this past week, with the recently formed Town Meeting Study and Improvement Committee coming forward with a series of articles geared towards streamlining the town meeting process. Articles 7 and 8 would set a new start time for town meeting a half hour earlier at 7 p.m. and would introduce a 10 p.m. cutoff for new articles to be introduced. While the decision to move up the start time for town meeting was quickly approved, there was some deliberation over the proposed end time.
The Board of Selectmen supported this initiative, and I know, speaking on behalf of myself, the rationale behind it was, let's try it. And in part because everybody reaches a point of diminishing return at some point during the evening. For those that are working, getting up early, as the previous speaker, one of the previous speakers discussed, it gets harder and harder. And at 11 o'clock at night, I'd argue that some of us aren't making our best decisions. So it's an intent to give the time that it's required, to give each of the speakers the time they need, and to allow this body the time to deliberate in the way that we ought to. So it's for that purpose that I'd recommend passage of this article, knowing that we can always come back and make adjustments.
Article 10 proposed a limit to how long speakers could address town meeting, with a speaker needing to receive a 2/3 vote to be allowed extended time.
If this article passes, it contradicts the basic principles of a representative town meeting. You are here tonight and future town meetings to speak and represent the voters of your precinct who elected you. This article seeks to muffle your voices.
Generally, I agree with the intent of this article. I'm a little concerned with the language. My concern is with the allowing of the speaker to continue his speech with the consent of 2/3 vote. I think the article is trying to speed up the process of town meeting, and I think it will just slow it down and cause delay if every time someone hits 5 minutes, we ask for a 2/3 vote, and we see how long a 2/3 vote can take. And if you multiply that by multiple speakers, or a single speaker coming up here multiple times and asking for a 2/3 vote every single time he or she has met their limit, it could significantly delay the process of town meeting.
The idea that a group that claims to be supporters of town meeting are working to limit speech in any way is the antithesis to the idea of town meeting. To limit public speaking for lay people with the full knowledge that commercial interests and everybody else I was talking about have essentially unlimited ability to speak to further their interests, while us lay people are limited in the amount of speaking that we can do and how often we can get up, is an absolutely horrible idea.
97 having voted in the affirmative, 70 in the negative, the motion has been carried.
Later in the evening, town meeting members decided on an article that, if passed, would amend current zoning bylaws regarding 55 and over housing on a portion of Main Street.
I don't think that there's anybody that doesn't know that a lot of this article is about the old St. Mary's High School or Middle School East. I go back long enough that it was St. Mary's High School. In the back of the room and in the front to my left are renditions of that building, but this article is not just about that building. The question was asked before. This basically affects two zones in Milford, the CA district, which I call the downtown district, and the CB district, which is also called the neighborhood district. Just for points of reference, the CB district begins basically at the intersection of 109 and 16 and comes up right about to the corner of the fire station, and then the CA district goes up all the way through Milford Hospital and includes Main Street up that way where my office is.
I love this building. I love what we would like to see done here. I like the concept of the 55 plus for this space, and I love the fact that we're using the old building. It's historical to this town. So I'm very happy that this is going to occur. My concern is that we're basically taking all of Main Street and turning that into 55 plus housing, if I understand this correctly. So number one, do we want to do that for essentially the whole length of Main Street from 109 to the hospital? And two, what happens to the people who already live in those zones?
A lot of you seemed really concerned about the parking situation, and I just want to remind you that in 55 plus housing, there are going to be a lot of people who no longer drive, and there are going to be a lot of people who are no longer living with someone else. So the percentage of people who are going to be two-car families is not going to be what you think of if you're imagining your home, if you're thinking of your home and your kids and your minivan and your other van.
146 having voted in the affirmative, 7 in the negative, the necessary 2/3 has been acquired and the motion is passed.
To see how town meeting voted on every article on this year's warrant, we encourage you to visit our YouTube page where you can view town meeting in its entirety.
Milford High School is in search of a new assistant principal after current assistant Cicely Tucker was recently promoted to the role of associate principal. From a field of 47 applicants, 3 finalists were determined, and those 3 were present at the high school on Wednesday night to take part in a parent and community forum. Let's listen into what each of the finalists had to say.
I'm delighted that you'll be here to meet our 3 finalists for the new assistant principal of Milford High School. Our first candidate this evening is going to be Amy Marshall. So Amy, please come on up, and Amy's going to introduce herself and then take your questions.
I am currently the coordinator of instruction and technology at Aspet Valley Collaborative. A collaborative is a small alternative setting for students with social emotional learning disabilities who need a placement outside of a large public school. I would like to be the next assistant principal at Milford Public Schools at the high school. And the real reason I want to do that is I see Milford as a thriving community. I think that the diversity of the population, the student population, and the population of the town is a value. And I think that making sure education for all students, making sure that a comprehensive and equal education for all students is very, very important. I think I'm generally a fairly positive person. And so for me, instilling culture with students is really important in getting to know them. So being present at lunches, being present at sporting events, being present at theater, whatever the students are doing, I should be there. I should get to know the students as individuals and not just as a group or a class. I want to know who they are and what their goals are. And I think that interest and the idea that we should all care and take care of each other builds positive climate. I think it works well with teachers as well. If teachers know that as an administrator, I'm there to hear their concerns, I might not always agree with them, but I can hear them out and give them my perspective. I think that builds climate. I think when teachers work together and administrators work with teachers, it builds positive climate. There should be room for discourse in any school, and whether or not we all agree, as long as we can give support to what we're saying, I think that's important. And I think that those things go with just building relationships with people.
Our second candidate this evening is Christine Rivesi-Weinstein. So Christine, coming up, I want to give you a chance to introduce yourself to our community, and then you'll take some questions, all right? Please, come on up.
I grew up in Canton, and I'm a product of the Canton Public Schools. I'm proud to say that. I did my undergraduate work at UMass Amherst, and although I was a biology major right from freshman year, I didn't really know what I wanted my career path to be. I wasn't 100% sure what I wanted to do with that degree. And as a lot of my classmates were choosing careers in medicine and going on to med school or careers in scientific research, none of those really felt like they fit my personality. Because what I was really feeling I was passionate about was helping other people. So I decided to take a risk, and I decided to pursue a degree in education. So I went to Harvard and got my master's in education in teaching and in curriculum writing. And shortly after graduating, I was hired in Attleboro to be a science teacher. I taught biology and chemistry at all levels. I did that for my first 11 years there. After my 11th year, the science department head at that time, and just so that you know, in Attleboro they use content coordinator and department head sort of interchangeably, but they're the same thing. She retired, and I was hired to take that position. So handling a difficult evaluation with a faculty member is tricky. It's a tough conversation to have. I haven't ever had to deal with an overall poor performance. So with our evaluation system, there are different standards that you rate a teacher in. They're either needs improvement or proficient or exemplary. And so a teacher might get a needs improvement in a particular standard, but overall their performance is still considered proficient. So ultimately, the way you have to handle that is these are conversations that have to happen well before you give that final evaluation, whether it's a formative evaluation report or a summative evaluation report. You can't just surprise a teacher and be like, oh, and here's your report, you're not proficient in this area. Because ultimately, it gives the evaluation process a reputation of being punitive And ultimately, you should start from a place where the evaluation process is an area for growth. And so if a teacher isn't meeting your expectation for growth to the point where you feel like you might need to tell them that there's an area that needs improvement, that conversation has to happen long before the time where you're documenting that.
I'm very pleased to welcome our third finalist this evening, Ms. Pranima Vadhara. So please join me in welcoming Pranima.
For the 25 years I've been in education, I've been primarily, I would say, half between a teacher and half an administrator. So you've got that rich background of both experiences. For me, I've taught science and math in the Boston Public Schools and led the science department at that time. And that was for about 10 or 11 years. Then went on to do my master's degree at Harvard and went on for administration, planning, and social policy. I felt I wasn't doing enough in the classroom and I had more to give and more ideas. Then went on to Newton South High School as the vice principal of a very, very large school of a diverse student body, and stayed there for 3 years and did some really amazing work. That was my canvas. I felt like I was in a kid with a candy jar of trying out new things, and the principal said, you just go with it. I hope our principal will say that too. You know, try this out and try this out. And so a lot of the interdisciplinary work of hooking up teachers together, I initiated, wrote a lot of grants for the school, took 22 kids on a plane to India for a part of exchange program, God bless me, and we all lived through that. It was amazing. Initiated a China program there, so I had a lot of rich experiences, and I was also teaching, so the administrators also taught a class, so it was a real full day of between discipline, between teaching and learning, and between trying out initiatives. That was my Newton sort of lifestyle. We have a couple of charter schools nearby, Catholic schools that pull our kids away, so, you know, I would say a couple of things. Going out to 7th and 8th graders at an early level, and not just, hey, it's the end of the 8th grade year and let's market, you know, what Norwood High is doing. I would say starting early and forging those relationships. I think we do a very good job in fostering mentorships between our middle and our high school. So, I mean, I was part of that initiative where creating a buddy system of our juniors and seniors who go out to 7th and 8th graders and talk about some of their experiences in a safe way and say, this is what high school is going to be like, because you may say whatever and we may say whatever, but if a 16-year-old cool-looking really guy says something to a 13-year-old, that's cool. So we want to market sort of what's going on in our school appropriately, get out to some of those parent nights, reach out to some of the parents. So we have many, many opportunities for parents to come in other than, you know, there's step-up day. We have a curricular night for parents just on curriculum, so we have a showcase of work in that night. So we've got the science department that displays, and it's a competition. So we've made it sort of like this academic competition. So science department, you know, they show off their robotics and things that they're doing. English department shows off their work, and so science usually wins. I'm sorry, I'm a science person. But we like to showcase our work and connect sort of what we're doing and to parents, and we do get a lot of kids that way.
With the softball team away all week, we had a chance to return to Fino Field to check out the Scarlet Hawks baseball team in action on both Monday and Wednesday. The young Scarlet Hawks took on a pair of tough Davenport opponents in Foxboro and North Attleboro. Let's see how the action went down at Fino this week.
Milford entered this week's action with 10 losses on the season, meaning the team would need to win out over their final 7 games if they hoped to squeak their way into a playoff spot. The Hawks hoped to take the first step in that process on Monday against a Foxboro team they were able to defeat earlier in the year. Milford would come to bat in the bottom of the first against Warriors starter Devin Hassett. Hassett would make quick work of Matt Shaver and Colby Pyers to open the inning, but a walk to Aiden Wild followed by a wild pitch would give Milford just a little bit of life in the frame.
Now full. Wild a couple of steps for a head start as this ball is grounded to second base. It drifts away from Franciselli. The throw to first base does not get there in time, and Wild, who was off on the pitch, ends up coming all the way around to score without a throw. So just a slow roller to second base. Franciselli, only playing defensively, couldn't squeeze it cleanly, and ends up serving as a run-scoring play as Wild comes home to give Milford a 1-0 lead.
As the game went on, Milford would be presented with run-scoring chances in each inning. In the second, a hit batter and a throwing error would lead to 2 in scoring position with 2 outs, but Hassett would get Matt Shaver on a strikeout to end the inning. In the third, it was wild at second base again, this time with Matt Nickerson at the plate, but the Foxborough starter would come through with another inning-ending K. Then, with 1 on and 2 out in the fourth, Hassett would run into control problems, walking Nick Marcolini and Matt Shaver back-to-back to give the Hawks a bases-loaded 2-out chance. Despite only allowing a run on 1 hit to that point in the game, Foxborough would elect to make a pitching change, bringing in hard-throwing righty Anthony Malika. In the end, the move would pay off as Malika would induce a harmless pop-up off the bat of Colby Pyers. Milford would strand 3 in the inning and a grand total of 7 through the first 4, but they would still lead the game thanks to the quality pitching of junior Dan Corsini. After pitching a 1-2-3 first, Corsini would pitch his way out of a 2-on 2-out jam in the second, getting a ground ball from his counterpart Hassett to finish off the inning. Corsini would go on to strike out the final batters in both the third and fourth innings, and would also force Foxborough to strand the tying run at third in the fifth. Corsini would return to the mound in the sixth, working on a 1-hit shutout, but Foxborough would finally start to make some adjustments in that sixth inning. With 2 runners on and 1 out, first baseman Joe Cavallari would deliver a base hit to left. Nickerson would have trouble fielding the ball cleanly, and that would allow the tying run to score without a throw. That hit proved to be just the boost of momentum Foxborough needed to take control of the game. The Warriors would end up sending 11 batters to the plate in the sixth, scoring 7 times on 5 hits, and they would be assisted by 3 Milford errors. What started out as a good pitcher's duel would end in a lopsided final score, as Foxborough would go on to defeat Milford by a final of 7-1, officially eliminating the Hawks from playoff contention. With a spot in the playoffs officially off the table, Milford took the field on Wednesday with recalibrated expectations. The young Scarlet Hawks would face a very tough challenge as they hosted the 11-1 North Attleboro Rocketeers. Milford would send their top starter to the mound in the matchup in sophomore Luke Rosa. Facing leadoff batter Brendan McHugh, Rosa would allow a ground ball to third that Colby Pyers was unable to snag, which would give the Hockomock League MVP candidate Nick Sinicola a chance to come to the plate and do some early damage.
With 11 runs batted in on the year, sends this one out to center field. That is going to hit grass and roll into the left center field gap. This will mean a run early for North Attleboro, as McHugh will come all the way around to score. Sinicola thinking 3. Here comes the throw. It is there in plenty of time, and Sinicola is out, trying to stretch it into a triple.
Northwood played a second run in the inning off a wild pitch to take an early 2-0 lead. In the second inning, Sinicola would come to the plate again, this time with a runner in scoring position.
McHugh leads off at first, not held on, as this ball is sent over the head of the shortstop out into left center. Rounding third base is Harding. He will score. McHugh will stop at third on a long single for Sinicola, his second RBI of the game.
As for the Milford bats, they would struggle early against North starter Peter Cohen. Cohen would retire the first 7 batters he faced in the game before Justin Appleby would finally get the Hawks going with a 1-out single in the third. After Aiden Wild was hit by a pitch, Matt Shaver would step to the dish, hoping to deliver a 2-out hit.
And Shaver sends one out towards the gap in left field. That is down for a hit. Rounding third base and crossing the plate is Appleby. Wild will get the stop sign at third. It's an RBI single for Shaver. And that will bring the score now to 3-1.
Tyler Almeida would then come to the plate with the tying runs on. He would deliver a pitch fairly deep out into center field, but the catch would be made, and Milford would be forced to settle for just the single run in the inning. Milford hoped to keep the momentum on their side as Rosa returned to the mound for the fourth, but the North bats would once again flex their muscles.
Milford plays in tight at the corners, up the middle. Second baseman and shortstop at double play depth. Here's the 1-1 pitch, and it's hit hard. It gets past Colby Pyers at third base, and 2 runs will score for North Attleboro as Pierce will hustle into second base with a 2-run double.
North would tack on 1 final run in the 6th inning as Pierce would collect a second RBI double on the afternoon. The Rocketeers would combine for 5 extra base hits in the game against Milford pitching. The Hawks would make some noise in the bottom half of the 7th. Aiden Wild would collect his 7th run batted in of the season on a single, and then Shaver would produce his second hit of the game to put 2 on with 2 out, but Tyler Almeida would then fly out to right to end the game. North Attleboro guarantees themselves no less than a share of the Davenport Division title as they defeat the Milford Scarlet Hawks by a final score of 6-2.
While it was a tough week for the boys, the Milford softball team continued to mow down their competition. Back on May 11th, the girls turned what many thought would be a playoff preview into a laugher as they defeated Newton North on the road by a final of 13-0. Then after the girls overpowered Foxborough 19-6 on Monday, all eyes turned to North Attleboro on Wednesday, where the Lady Hawks and the Lady Rocketeers finally met for the first time this season. Backed by a career-high 5 RBI performance from Emily Hartman and a 2-hit day from Emily Pierre Gustavo, who set a new school record with 144 career hits, Milford was able to take down their chief division rival by a final score of 5-1. Kelly Reichert notched her 15th win of the season, allowing just 1 run on 5 hits while striking out 5. The now 16-0 Lady Hawks have just 4 games remaining in the regular season, with 3 of those coming at home. We plan to have more coverage of the Lady Hawks on Tuesday as they host the Sharon Lady Eagles. And now let's get to this week's upcoming events.
Here is one final reminder that coming up this weekend, the Citizens for Milford will be hosting a Medal of the Liberty ceremony. Families of over 40 servicemen from Milford will be awarded the prestigious Massachusetts Medal of Liberty as part of an emotional and patriotic ceremony. Awards and citations will also be presented to the families on behalf of local and state dignitaries, and there will also be patriotic musical performances by the Greater Milford Community Chorus, as well as other local and school groups. The Medal of Liberty ceremony will be taking place on Sunday, May 20th, inside Upper Town Hall beginning at 2 p.m. The doors will open at 1:30, and residents are encouraged to arrive early to secure parking and a seat, as a large crowd is expected. For more information, log on to the website citizensformilford.com. This event is free and open to the public. And here is an early heads up that next month the Milford Youth Center will be holding their annual Dressed Up, Not Messed Up fashion show. As always, the goal of this event is to raise awareness about underage drinking and to help teens become better informed so they can make healthy decisions throughout life. The event also looks to increase youth self-esteem and attitudes towards their body image. This year's fashion show will take place on Saturday, June 9th, over at the Youth Center on Pearl Street, beginning at 6 p.m. The cost of admission is $3 per person or $10 per family. For more information on the event, you can email Christine at cdadario@townofmilford.com.
Before we close out the show, we want to update you on the status of this weekend's Celebrate Milford. Due to considerable rainfall that is expected in the area throughout the day on Saturday, Celebrate Milford is officially being moved to Sunday, May 20th. Due to this change, the event will now start at noon and conclude at 8 p.m. For all of the latest details as well as any other potential changes, we encourage you to log on to the Celebrate Milford Facebook page. That is all we have for you this week. As always, we thank you for tuning in. And from all of us here at Milford TV, this is Tim Coet saying have a great week. So long, everybody.